I have spent my adult life in the world of theological thought and psychotherapeutic endeavors. And in that peculiar way in which my own education unfolded, all of my work really had to do with the two worlds of psychology and religion, and so that has been my life. I grew up in Oklahoma, as most of you know, and in my college days, my next door neighbor was a man named Tom Oden, who was professor of pastoral theology at Phillips University, and who wrote a book called Charisma and Counseling. And I don't think it's in print anymore. Tom went on to be professor at Drew University here on the East Coast. And but a lot of what Tom had to say in his book, Charisma and Counseling, would better illuminate some of the things I'm going to say today. So if you want to turn to that and see what he has to say, that would be probably helpful to you. I'm going to incorporate the scripture into what I had to say, so just bear with me, and when I get to that, you can read along with me in your bulletin. I've been influenced so profoundly by a number of people. Among those people who have influenced me most profoundly are people like Carl Rogers, the famous psychologist who wrote On Becoming a Person, Viktor Frankl, who was the survivor of the death camps in Germany, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, Erich Fromm, who wrote The Art of Loving and so many other books that had to do with our human condition, and Paul Tillich, that existentialist theologian who was able to form those categories of meaning and relatedness, fulfillment, and creating possibilities. These have been influences on me in a sense that I have in many ways realized that my life has tried to live out some of these principles. And my studies have taught me that much of what we do in the realm of psychotherapy really is an implicit acting out of what the Christian faith tries to make explicit in its affirmation. There is, in the world of psychotherapy, a fundamental principle called unconditional positive regard. It's Carl Rogers' term. And what that means is that when someone comes into therapy, and they have a therapist who is able to offer unconditional positive regard, that person feels freed in the safety of that context, in the accepting nature of that context, to enter the world of their feelings, identify their feelings, own their feelings, and bring those feelings to expression. And they're able to do that in such a way that they're able to express the internal world of their thoughts, feelings, conflicts, fears, and hopes without fear, without facade, without hesitation. A number of studies have been done as to which methodological approaches to psychology are the best. Is it the Freudian approach? Is it the Jungian approach? Is it the Gestalt approach? Is it the Rogerian approach? Is it the cognitive psychology approach? What are the different approaches that are the most effective ways to do psychotherapy? And every time what we come to the conclusion about that is the most essential aspect of a therapeutic relationship is the relationship. What we know beyond doubt is that what frees a person to be themselves openly and honestly and authentically, what it is that frees a person to enter that world of their feelings and fears and bring them to expression, what it is that allows a person to enter the world of their internal conflicts and somehow bring those forth openly, courageously, is the fact that that person trusts that he or she is in the context of someone who offers them unconditional acceptance. That they will not be judged, they will not be condemned, they will not be rejected. It is the quality of the accepting relationship that frees people to become themselves authentically in that moment. There's a psychologist named Cindy Gerard who once wrote a book, and in it he said, what therapy really is an invitation to authenticity, and that will take place only in the context of unconditional acceptance. And that's such good news to people, that there's a place where they can come. There's a person with whom they can relate and know surely that they will not be judged, they will not be condemned, they will not be rejected, but they will be accepted unconditionally. And what is key about that is not that they have found a person who is able to accept them unconditionally, but what they begin to discover, it's not the therapist and the therapist's acceptance of them, though that's really important, but they begin to discover that they, in their very essence, are acceptable. That's the point. The point is not that, oh, I found a therapist who is able to be accepting of me, so I know one place in the world where I'm acceptable. That would make therapy pretty limited and unrealistic. Okay, I can do this in the therapist's office, but I can't do it in the real world. The whole point of therapy is to help you come to an awareness of yourself that you can take into the world, and a good therapist is always working to get himself or herself fired. I mean, that's no longer needed. And that happens when they suddenly discover, oh, it's not that Lance accepts me. That I am, in and of myself, acceptable. I'm not acceptable because Lance accepts me. Lance accepts me because I'm acceptable. Now that's what's key. And the tragedy is that most people are living their lives today feeling that they have to hide aspects of themselves from others. Feeling they have to be less than authentic with others because somewhere inside they have a conflict that tells them, I'm not truly acceptable. I'm not truly adequate. I'm not truly lovable. And they live their lives trying to please others, trying to be what others want them to be, trying to be the way that they think will make them acceptable because they don't operate from the existentialist point of view that I am acceptable, and all that others can do is pass judgment in terms of whether they can accept me or not, whether they can see the value or whether they cannot. So the authentic person has come to the awareness that the words, deeds, actions, and evaluations of others cannot cause me to determine who I am. All they can do is give their evaluation of what they can or cannot appreciate. No one knew this better than Jesus as he stood before the crowd, ready to crucify him. I don't think in that moment as he stood next to Pilate and Pilate said, who do you want, Barabbas or Jesus? That Jesus suddenly said, oh my gosh, they're choosing Barabbas. I must not be very acceptable. I must not be very valuable. There must be something wrong with me if they would take this creep Barabbas over me. No, the words, deeds, actions, and evaluations of others had no power with him. He knew who he was. And their evaluations could not change that. So what does he forgive them from the cross? Remember from 2 weeks ago? Their ignorance. Their lack of judgment, their lack of discernment. They know not what they do. They don't know what they're doing. And so, in my own work as a psychotherapist, my task is always and only to be a beneficial presence in the life of the one who sits before me. My only task is to be an occasion for their experiencing how acceptable they are and how appreciative of their acceptability I am. My goal is not for them to walk out saying, oh, Lance is such an accepting person. My goal is for them to walk out saying, I am such an acceptable person. That's what it's about. Now, in this context, it does not mean that a good psychotherapist is going to say, well, whatever you do is just fine with me. If you're beating your wife, that's okay, because I'm so unconditionally accepting. It means that you, the person, are acceptable to me, and precisely because I value you the way I value you in your acceptability, that I need to call you into question about some of your behaviors, because some of your behaviors do not serve you well. You will discover that when you treat others meanly, when you see others as objects, when you see others as those you are privileged to take advantage of, that you will not experience your own life as fully or as meaningfully or as lovingly as you could. Because I can care about you so deeply, I am concerned about some of your behaviors. Because I want you to be able to understand how loving you can be, I call into question all those ways in which you are acting in a non-loving way, especially to yourself. When I love someone, I don't want to stand by when another is abusing them. When I care about someone, I don't want to be silent when someone is abusing them. As a therapist, I won't remain silent when I see someone abusing the person I'm doing therapy with, even if the person who's abusing them is the person themselves. But that comes in the context of an unconditional acceptance and a deep commitment to be nothing but a beneficial presence in their life. And that's why we discover people find therapy so meaningful. That they are able to understand themselves, they are able to resolve their issues, they are able to tune into their own acceptability precisely because they have experienced being accepted. They're beginning to understand their own lives because they have allowed themselves to be understood. Is that not what Paul is saying? Now, then I understand fully because I've been fully understood. Is that not Paul's message? See, in sharing yourself with the other, openly, honestly, authentically, the basic rule of education comes into play, that the best way to know a subject is to teach it. The therapist is your student. I'm sitting in my room with a person who's the world's leading expert on that person. No one knows themselves more than the person knows himself or herself. And they're teaching me about them. They're sharing their life with me. And I'm a good student. I'm listening, I'm responding, I'm questioning, I'm doing all the things a good student would do. And in their teaching me about them, they learn about them. So in being fully understood, they understand fully. And that takes place in a context that frees them to share themselves in such a way that I can understand them so that they understand fully. Now, how does this relate to the church? Well, at a practical level, it relates to this particular church, because this particular church began the counseling center, which, just for your information, over all the years that we've been in existence, have literally offered counseling services to tens of thousands of people. Did you hear that? This little congregation that began the counseling center has put in motion a context where people can come and be accepted and valued and understood, where people can come and be open and honest and authentic, where people can come and resolve their internal issues and their relational issues and move forward in life with more meaning and more sense of fulfillment and more capacity for loving relationship. And this little church has made it possible for literally tens of thousands of people to be benefited in that way. So at a practical level, that's one thing it has to do with this particular congregation. At a more emotional level and at a more fundamental level, all of this points beyond itself to what the church claims is its good news. And the good news of the church is that you are accepted. That whatever your concept of God is in the Christian faith, that concept is one in which God unconditionally accepts you for who you are. That you are valued and that you are accepted. What is more, in the context of Christian faith, the affirmation is that we have seen this demonstration of God's unconditional acceptance of us in the personality of Jesus of Nazareth, who was consistently unconditionally accepting all those who seemed so unacceptable to everyone else. That whatever else it was, the ministry of Jesus was a ministry of unconditional acceptance of people, of His valuing them, so that they felt free to be themselves, so that suddenly they could hear what they had never heard before, so suddenly they could see what they had never seen before, so suddenly they moved to a sense of health that they had never had before. And let me remind you that the word salvation and the word health come from the same root word, salvus. That to move into salvation is to move into health. To move into sin, which comes from archery, is to miss the point. So they moved from ignorance to awareness. They moved from darkness to light. They moved from blindness to seeing. They moved from deafness to hearing. All of a sudden, life opens up to them because they have felt accepted and valued. And that is the incarnation, we claim, of what God's love is all about. All of His stories, the stories of the prodigal son, are about the unconditional acceptance. Just, yeah, I know what you did, and I don't like what you did. I don't like the fact, son, that you blew your inheritance. I don't like the fact that you've been living your life wasting it away. But you are accepted. It's because I love you that I don't like what you did. But you are accepted and you are loved and you are received. And when you come to yourself, in the Scripture, the literal translation is, and when the young man came to his right mind, psychotherapy. When the young man came to his right mind, he returned to find he has always been accepted, always been loved, and that's the good news. And Paul argues that that's what we are about, the Christian community of faith. That we become that community that affirms uninhibitedly and unreservedly that people are precious in and of themselves, that people have value in and of themselves. There's neither male nor female, there's neither Greek nor Jew, there's neither slave nor free. There are people, there are persons of value, and we are to love them all. Because all of them are worthy of being loved, and what we can do is to show our appreciation for the worthiness that is already there. We do not have the power to convert worthiness on another. And so that whole concept of the God in me sees the God in you. The love in me sees the love in you. The Quaker understanding of holding everyone in the light is a profound confession of the Christian faith that we must never forget. So listen to how Paul says it. You can read the Scripture with me. In his letter to the Corinthians, he says to them, "For though I am free with respect to all, I have made myself a slave to all so that I might win more of them. To the Jews I became a Jew in order to win Jews. To those under the law I became as one under the law, though I myself am not under the law, so that I might win those under the law. To those outside the law, I became as one outside the law, though I am not free from God's law, but am under Christ's law, so that I might win those outside the law. To the weak I became weak, so that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all people, that I might by all means save some. I do it for the sake of the good news, the gospel, so that I may share in its blessings." Now, what Paul was talking about is what every good psychotherapist does. He's talking about a willingness to set aside his own prejudices, his own perspectives, and to stand under, understand, to literally stand under what the others experience. It's called empathic understanding. I am willing to stand under what you are sharing, what you are experiencing. I may not agree with it. That's not the point. But I understand it. I'm willing to be with you. I'm willing to be for you as you work through the issues that hold you back from meaningful life. The good news, according to Paul, is that this is exactly what God does. For him, that's what the incarnation is all about. That God literally enters into the life of humanity, stands under what it means to be a human. The same way a therapist, though I've never been an addict, always attempt to stand under what the addict is going through. Though I've never been divorced, I try to stand under what the divorcing person is going through. Though I've never been a woman, I try to stand under what the female is going through as she's objectified and misused. That's the point. To enter into the world of the other. To be in the world of the other. To stand under the other and to be with them so that they are no longer alone. And Paul argues that's exactly what the good news is. That that's exactly what God does. That God stands into our world, has come into our world, stands under our experience and is with us. And that we have seen this in persons, and for Christians, we've seen this in the person of Jesus of Nazareth. And what Jesus of Nazareth was constantly doing was accepting people that others deemed unacceptable. And that what we, the church, need to be doing, since we are now the body of Christ, since we now have this ministry of reconciliation, is to do what Jesus did, to follow in the way of Jesus, and to be radically accepting of persons. So that for us, all the prejudices, all the judgments, all the negative condemnations that characterize our culture as a whole go away.
Amen.
Because what we are looking at is persons who are precious in and of themselves. When we pass the peace to one another, we need to look into one another's eyes and see the preciousness of the other. When we pass the communion to one another, we need to look at the other directly and say, in our hearts and our minds, you are precious. Because you are. That's what Eric Fromm calls respect. You've heard me talk about that before. He reminds us it's the same root word as spectacles. Respect. That you spectacle someone. And you don't see them as objects. We've heard enough about how objectified people and women can be lately. You don't see them as objects. You see them as persons. And then you re-spectacle them. You see them a second time as the precious, unique person only that one is. That's what I never forget as a therapist. When someone's sitting in front of me, I'm reminded again and again, the person in front of me is a precious, unique individual. That there's only one of a kind. This person is the only one of, this is the only Jane, the only John, the only Sam, the only Sarah there is in the universe. And as Fromm reminds us, there's nothing more precious than one of a kind. I'm literally with one of a kind. And he, she is precious. And I celebrate that. And in my faith, I celebrate that because that's what I've seen in the faith of Jesus. And in Jesus' life, he celebrated that because that's what his concept of God was. That's what we're called to be. The extravagantly, uninhibitedly accepting community that offers unconditional positive regard, unconditional acceptance to all persons, celebrating them for who they are, receiving them as a gift to our lives, and committing to them as a beneficial present for theirs. It's what we've seen in the Christ. It's what Christ represented as God. And it's why we can say, those who live in love live in God, And God lives with them. Even here, even now, even with us. Okay? Okay.